This is the Truth Network.
Bible Wonders of Habakkuk. Some light from heaven to reveal some things this morning in the Vav verse of the second chapter of Habakkuk. It's the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet and the sixth verse. And certainly this is going to shine some light. And I got to say that sometimes, like Spurgeon says, we get a whiff, or in this case, a glimpse based on the light that we're given of our inner cesspool. And then, oh man, we desperately need God, which is, he's got us right where he wants us. So, of course, this being an extension, the Vav is also an and kind of thing. And so here's some more information about this puffed up person who thinks he's God. But again, unfortunately, a lot of times it reveals things in us that aren't so pretty. So in English, it reads, "Shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay." Oh my goodness. There are some challenges, in this verse for me personally, because it speaks to that thick clay has to do with your indebtedness. And again, this is almost like saying, clearly it's talking about the, people that are making their name mud. Okay. You don't want the name, obviously, Benedict Arnold, or, I would imagine that nobody named Arnold names their, son Benedict. I mean, that wouldn't be too cool. And certainly, Judas's name is mud, and Adolf Hitler, and you can think about all the people's names who are mud. And it's interesting how a parable gets taken up. And in other words, people begin to have an opinion about you, and in a way that, they bind on earth what they're going to bind in heaven. And wow, I don't want this kind of binding that my name would be connected to such things. But when you take that which is not yours, essentially you're stealing, or when you're borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and it's really an interesting word. Actually, I think it's a beautiful word, that when it says he ladeth himself with clay, it has to do with a yoke when you look at the Hebrew of it, and then you're yoking yourself to your potential. That's a normal debt, but this one, it's gone beyond a normal debt, and so it extends out with another yud and another tet, which means you're yoking yourself to more debt than you'll ever fulfill, which is exactly what this guy has done. But again, essentially bankrupt. And we get bankrupt in all sorts of ways when we take things from other people that are not ours, or we borrow against our potential, however that may be. And especially when we're taking somebody else's dignity, or we're taking when we say bad things about people, in a sense, we're laying up this clay. We're putting mud on our own situation. And so as the more I thought about this, actually, the more I saw, wow, God really has something for me in this that I need to consider as far as, how I need to take up my own clay. Of course, Rashi talks about how this is Belshazzar, and his name is obviously becomes mud, and how, they certainly took up a parable against him. And of course, you could go out throughout history and see all the people that their name became mud. But again, I think each of these verses, has to do with us, and has to do with, taking things, including people's dignity and all that from them, based on things we do. But also, if we're just laying up debt that we cannot fulfill, or we're not paying back all our bills, which is something I can never do based on what happened in the dealership, and to an extent, all those people that I can never pay back, my name's mud. It just is. They can take up a parable against me, and therein lies the challenge in this verse. The beautiful thing is, I researched, and I thought it was really, really helpful, And for those of you who don't know, maybe I should tell a little bit of the story. When we lost a dealership, part of what happened is that my office manager wasn't paying my payroll taxes. And as a result, we owed the IRS literally, almost $1.3 million or something, based on all the taxes and the penalties and all the stuff that was charged to that. And then when all that collapsed, the SBA had taken out the loan on the property, and unfortunately the bank just unloaded the property at a crazily low price. And of course, they wrote off all that debt to me, which left me with another $600,000 or $700,000 in debt. And then based on that, we left Chrysler holding the bag for a bunch of money. So, all that is some miry clay that, again, got put all over my name. And there's no doubt that there were other people that were harmed along the way in to some extent, some other creditors. But no customers, thank goodness. But I know that there were some people that, as far as they were concerned, my name was mud. And they saw this as I had written checks that I could never pay back. And so there you go. I mean, it's just, something that clearly, God has for us. So what I needed, actually, I needed the 40th Psalm, okay? So I was looking for cross references, and I found this one, and I'm like, oh, good, right? Like, God did wipe your slate clean, okay? There's only certain things you can do forever. And of course, we continue to actually pay on some of those debts, the ones that are still set up, and we do what we can do. But I love what Psalm 40 says is again, Jesus made us white as snow. But I love what the psalmist said, actually, David. He says, he brought me up also out of a horrible pit and out of the miry clay. In other words, it's the exact same word, that only this time it's miry, which, I got myself all dirty, and set my feet upon a rock and established my goings. And of course, the whole 40th Psalm is a treasure. But I think it's fascinating that here's the extension of this bloodthirsty man. And as we lay up all sorts of debts, right? As we, I thought about it this morning. What a horrible thing it is to think that we're a self-made man. and in any way that we get puffed up and begin to look down on others, we are literally putting miry clay all over ourselves. And so this is it's a really challenging set of verses, and I'm so grateful for Habakkuk's reproof, right? Because this is what Habakkuk started off with. He said, I wanted to hear God's reproof. And so I don't know which parts of this stuff applied to Habakkuk. He knows what God had for him and what he had for him as far as a prophecy, because there's no doubt this is prophecy, but it is also a reproof, because go back to that first verse, and what I will answer him when he reproves me. And so I think it's only good that we take a good look at our own cesspool, and we take a good whiff so we can see, let God show us how to move forward based on where we really are. And I'm praising God today for that idea of the cross, right? And how he took me out of the miry pit. But nonetheless, it's really good. I can continue to die myself and not fall back in. So again, I thank you so much for listening, what God's showing us in this. And I thank you. Apparently, a bunch of people shared this podcast. I'm so grateful for that. So if you like this and you know somebody who has a heart for this kind of learning, please send it to them, share it. I'm so grateful that you listened, and continue to pray for this ministry, that God would continue to open our eyes to behold wondrous things out of his law.